Hey, hands. I said hands visible. Stop moving.
Check the paperwork.
I'm LEO, flying armed.
I don't care.
Drop the bag.
Code red. She's armed.
Call Port Authority, now.
Get on the ground!
This internal security call was recorded on a Tuesday at 6:15 a.m. at JFK International Airport. What began as a standard security protocol check spiraled into one of the most humiliating and expensive scandals in the history of the Department of Homeland Security. Gary Miller, 48, had been a senior TSA agent at JFK for 12 years. 12 years that, if you looked closely at the paperwork, told a story his supervisors chose to ignore. Miller's personnel file contained 24 official complaints, 24, and critically 19 of them involved a specific pattern: aggressive screening of black professional women traveling in business class or holding priority status. In 2018, he detained a black neurosurgeon for 45 minutes, claiming her stethoscope looked like a component of an IED. In 2020, he forced a Yale professor to undo her braids right there in the screening area, because the scanner allegedly showed an anomaly. Each complaint ended the same way. Miller was sent to mandatory cultural sensitivity training. He attended, signed the sheet, and learned nothing. The system protected him. The union called him vigilant. His colleagues, behind his back, called him a ticking time bomb. On that Tuesday morning, the timer on that bomb finally hit 0. In Miller's mind, warped by years of unchecked authority and implicit bias, the world was divided into two categories: compliant passengers and threats. And for Gary Miller, a confident black woman who didn't lower her eyes when she saw his uniform, automatically fell into the second category. He didn't see a person. He saw a stereotype he needed to break. But the woman standing across from him that morning wasn't just a passenger. Elena Washington, 39, was a senior inspector with the U.S. Marshal Service. She was the elite of federal law enforcement. She had graduated top of her class at Howard University, then dominated the academy at Quantico, where she was the top marksman in her cohort. For 15 years, as part of the Fugitive Task Force, Elena had kicked down doors of cartel safe houses at Fort Rouge, negotiated with hostage takers, and transported mafia witnesses across state lines. Her colleagues called her the Steel. Her supervisors called her indispensable. She was used to danger, but what she never got used to was that the moment she took off her tactical vest and put on civilian clothes, to men like Gary Miller, she stopped being a hero and became a target. JFK Airport was humming with its usual morning chaos. 6:15 a.m., the smell of burnt Starbucks coffee mixed with the sharp scent of industrial floor cleaner. The air was frigid, the AC blasting despite the summer heat outside. The rhythmic clicking of suitcase wheels on tile created the heartbeat of the city. Eleanor was dressed in a sharp, grey-tailored suit and a white blouse. Hidden on her waistband beneath her blazer was her service-issued Glock 19 and her gold Marshal's badge on a leather holder. She was flying to D.C. for an emergency briefing at the DOJ. She had already completed the flying armed pre-registration, the strict protocol for officers flying with weapons. All the boxes were checked. All the paperwork was in the system. Elena approached the specific lane designated for law enforcement officers. There was no line, just Gary Miller leaning against the podium, chewing gum, staring blankly at a monitor. "Good morning, Agent," Eleanor said calmly, extending her paperwork and LEO form. "Deputy Marshal Washington, I'm flying armed. Here is my UFAN number for verification." Miller slowly looked up. He saw a black woman. He saw an expensive suit. And in his brain, the trigger snapped. Instead of taking the documents, he crossed his arms over his chest. Stand over there against the wall, he said dismissively, not even glancing at the papers. Excuse me, I am processing through the LEO protocol. You need to verify my number in Enlates. I said against the wall. You think I don't know what real feds look like? I've been working here 12 years. You don't look like a marshal. And what exactly does a marshal look like to you? Elena's voice dropped an octave, turning icy. Certainly not like that, Miller sneered. Hand over the bag and take off the jacket. I want to see what you're hiding under that blazer. Do you think security officers should be required to pass annual psychological tests for hidden aggression and racial bias? Or is the current training enough? Drop your opinion in the comments right now. Agent, I will not remove my jacket in a public concourse. I am carrying a concealed service weapon. That is a violation of security protocol. If you have doubts, call the Port Authority Police. I am the authority here. Miller's voice cracked into a shout, drawing the attention of the line behind them. You are refusing a direct order from airport security. That is a federal crime. No, you are the one committing a crime right now. I am giving you one last chance to look at my badge and run the number. Miller stepped out from behind the podium. His face was flushing red. He felt control slipping away, and that enraged him more than anything. He was used to people being afraid. He was used to apologies. This woman was looking at him the way one looks at a nuisance insect. Hands behind your head. Now, he screamed, grabbing his radio. Code red, armed female at checkpoint 3. She is non-compliant and aggressive. People in the queue began pulling out their phones. Security cameras captured the moment perfectly. A large, heavy-set white man in a TSA uniform towering over a calm black woman who held her hands open but refused to raise them. Sir, do not advance on me, Elena said clearly, shifting her stance. If you attempt to seize my weapon, I will consider it an assault on a federal agent. Are you threatening me? Miller lunged forward, reaching out to grab her shoulder and spin her toward the wall. It was his fatal mistake. Eleanor didn't punch him. She didn't need to. She used the inertia of his own sloppy movement against him. A subtle step to the side, a control hold on his wrist, and suddenly Gary Miller was on his knees. His arm twisted behind his back, his face pressed against the cold, dirty airport tiles. Do not move, she commanded, using the voice that usually made fugitives freeze. You are under arrest for assaulting a federal law enforcement officer. At that precise second, 3 Port Authority Police Department officers sprinted onto the scene, guns drawn. Drop the weapon, get on the ground, the police sergeant screamed. I am a U.S. Marshal, Elena shouted, keeping Miller pinned with one hand. My badge is on my left hip, ID in the interior pocket. Verify me now. Miller, pinned to the floor, was screaming, She's crazy, she has a gun, shoot her. The police sergeant, a veteran named Kowalski, signaled his team to hold fire. He approached slowly. Ma'am, slowly show me the badge. Eleanor, holding Miller down with practiced ease, used her free hand to flip back her blazer. The gold star with the eagle caught the fluorescent lights, U.S. Marshal. Kowalski squinted. He knew what fakes looked like. This was no fake. He looked up at Elena's face. And then the blood drained from his own. He recognized her. He had seen her photo on a departmental bulletin just a month ago. She had led a joint task force training. Oh God, Kowalski whispered. Lower your weapons. Guys, lower them. That's Inspector Washington. What? Miller wheezed from the floor. You're lying. She stole it. Shut up, Gary, Kowalski barked. Do you have any idea who you just tried to tackle? That is a senior inspector for the Marshal Service. Miller went rigid. In his mind, where rage had just been boiling, there was now a ringing silence. The puzzle pieces slammed together. The expensive suit, the confidence, the professional takedown that grounded him in less than a second. For the first time in 12 years, his prejudices hadn't just failed him. They had led him into a trap from which there was no escape. "Help me up," Elena said, releasing Miller's arm and dusting off her knees. Her voice was perfectly calm, but her eyes burned with a fire that promised retribution. "Ma'am, Inspector Washington, I offer my deepest apologies," Kowalski stammered. "We didn't know. The call came in as an armed civilian." "I know, Sergeant. My issue isn't with you. It's with this man." She pointed at Miller, who was slowly picking himself up, clutching his shoulder. His face had gone from red to a sickly shade of grey. "Sergeant Kowalski, I am formally requesting the CCTV footage from the last 15 minutes be secured immediately. And I want the Federal Security Director for this airport and a representative from the DHS Inspector General's office down here. Now." "But look," Miller stammered, trying to switch to his good old boy tactic. "We're all on the same side of the law here, right? I was just being vigilant. You know how it is, profiling, safety. You just didn't look like—" "Like what?" Eleanor cut him off, stepping into his personal space. "Finish the sentence, Mr. Miller. I didn't look like what? Like someone who could possibly hold a federal badge, or like the kind of person you're used to bullying without consequences?" A crowd had gathered. Dozens of phones were recording. Someone was live streaming on Instagram. The caption read, "Federal Marshal just took down a racist TSA agent. Take his badge and his credentials." Elena ordered the shift supervisor who had just arrived, breathless. "He is relieved of duty. I will personally ensure charges are filed for assault on a federal officer, unlawful detention, and civil rights violations." "Inspector, maybe we can handle this internally," the supervisor tried to plead. "Internally? You handled it internally 24 times according to the rumors about this checkpoint," Elena snapped. "Now a federal court is going to handle it. Do you think police and security agents should carry personal liability insurance for lawsuits like this? Or should the taxpayers foot the bill? Type 1 if the agent should pay, 2 if the government should pay." By 8 p.m. that night, the video of the incident had 2.5 million views. The hashtag #JudgeFireGaryMiller was trending #1 on Twitter. But the real storm hit the next morning when the story broke on national news. CNN, Fox, MSNBC, they all played the loop of Gary Miller lunging at a black woman and ending up eating the floor. Headlines screamed, "Racial profiling versus the badge. TSA agent assaults U.S. Marshal." Journalists dug up Miller's history of complaints. The New York Times ran a scathing exposé on how the union had protected him for a decade. But the worst was yet to come for the TSA. Elena Washington didn't just go back to work. She hired one of the most ruthless civil rights law firms in Washington, D.C. The lawsuit dropped 2 weeks later. The defendants included the Department of Homeland Security, the Transportation Security Administration, the private security contractor managing the checkpoint, and Gary Miller personally. The charges: violation of the Fourth Amendment, racial discrimination, assault, defamation, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The damages sought, $10 million. TSA lawyers tried to offer a settlement of $500,000 and a written apology. Eleanor laughed in their faces. "This isn't about money," she told the press on the courthouse steps. "This is about the fact that if they can do this to me, a senior inspector with a gun and a badge, what are they doing to the single mother, the teacher, the student who doesn't have my authority or my connections? I am not doing this for me. I am doing this to break the system that created Gary Miller." The legal battle lasted 18 months. During discovery, shocking details about the culture at that specific JFK terminal came to light. Group chats where agents shared racist memes and discussed who they were going to shake down that day were subpoenaed. Miller wasn't an anomaly. He was a product of his environment. The outcome was devastating for the defendants. Gary Miller was fired with cause. His name was added to the National Decertification Index, meaning he can never hold a job in law enforcement, security, or government again. Not even as a mall guard. But it got worse for him. The judge denied him qualified immunity. This is rare. The judge ruled that the rights violations were so egregious that any reasonable officer would have known they were illegal. This meant Miller was personally liable. His house, his pension, his savings, everything was seized to pay a portion of the judgment. The shift supervisor and the regional director were fired for negligence and covering up prior complaints. And the financial settlement? The government decided not to risk a jury trial, fearing an even larger public relations disaster. They agreed to Elena's demands. $10 million. It was one of the largest individual settlements for airport racial profiling in history. But Elena's victory wasn't measured in zeros on a check. 1 month after the payout, Congress passed the Inspection Transparency Act. The new rules included automatic suspension of any TSA agent after 3 complaints involving racial bias, mandatory supervisor presence for any screening involving physical contact, and a complete ban on touching hair without a specific threat confirmed by imaging technology. Did you know that before this case, agents could just be transferred to a different terminal after 10 complaints? Do you think these new rules will change reality, or is it just paper pushing? Elena donated $4 million of her settlement to a scholarship fund for Black students entering law enforcement academies. In her final interview after the case closed, sitting in that same grey suit, but now with the slight smile of a victor, Elena said the words that went viral across the globe. "I have worked in the justice system for 15 years. I have put murderers and cartel bosses behind bars. But the scariest moment of my career didn't happen in a drug den with a gun in my hand. It happened in a clean, bright airport when a man in a uniform decided my skin color nullified my oath and my service. He thought he could break me, but he forgot one important lesson of physics. Steel is forged in fire. He wanted to humiliate a black woman, but he woke up a federal marshal. And now every Gary Miller in this country knows the next person you decide to profile might just cost you everything you own." Elena Washington's story isn't just about instant karma. It is a reminder that power built on prejudice is fragile. It crumbles to dust when it collides with true dignity and the law. If you believe every case like this should end in termination and prosecution, not just a reprimand, hit that like button. Subscribe to the Justice Chronicler because we have hundreds more stories where justice finally catches up to those who thought they were untouchable. See you in the next video.